Welcome to the Wisdom Check by Tabletop to Keyboard. This is going to be our bi-weekly podcast where we discuss things such as Dungeons and Dragons. Actually, I think maybe we need to turn up my mic a little bit, guys. How about some more game?
This is the intro to end all intros. Talk about Dungeons, Dragons, and
Now, I don't think that's proper. This is a family show after all. This is the intro we can use, fellas. It's good, clean fun for everyone. Welcome to the Wisdom Check, where we have wholesome conversations about the dilemmas we face every day.
Nah, hold on a second. I got your intro right here. Yeah, that's better. Welcome to the Wisdom Check. Well, I'm right, just wrong. We're gonna have guests on to talk about it. It's gonna be awesome, because I said so.
He is right. He did say so. I don't know. Is surf music the best music for a podcast about D&D?
Fuck yeah.
Okay.
This just in, nobody can agree on our intro for this podcast. So we're just going to start. Welcome to the Wisdom Check. Roll for initiative. Fuck. A 1. It's like every time.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is part 2 of our episode from June 17th. And we had special guest on there that was Laugh Love Lindy. And she was fantastic. We had a really good conversation in the first half about how to get into character. And she gave us all kinds of tips about how she does it. We talked a lot about things we do, the importance of, costuming and types of food and, just accents and all kinds of stuff. So if you're into that sort of thing, go check that out. Part 1 is here on YouTube. You can find it. There will be a link going across the top right now if you missed it. With no further ado, Dustin's about to introduce the next topic that we're going to get into, and I hope you enjoy it.
So we did have a second topic to start to get into, though, and you as a DM, maybe you experienced this. You seem like you run with the same group for a lot, so you may not have this a lot. But do your players ever make PCs who are just rude? Do you get this?
Yeah, I've DM'd a lot of one shots with a lot of different people, and we have had a couple of people come in and out of our home group until it's been the same pretty much 4 of us. We've had a rotating 5th for a while until we finally found our little missing puzzle piece recently with producer Trav. But we've had several people because I love to have a group of 5 because if 2 people miss, you can still play with 3 people.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If 2 people miss in your group before, you might as well just call a game. So I was looking for that 5th for the longest time. I was just rotating through people because they just either weren't the right fit or they were. You'd be like, I know you're an okay person, but you're just really kind of pissing everybody off in the group every week. Can you not? So I've had some.
At that point, or is it their play style?
It depends on the person. For some people, it's just their character, and if it's just a character issue, if it's with persons, totally fine. You sit down, you have an adult conversation, saying, "Hey, this is causing some problems." If they're a matured adult, they will go, "Oh, I hadn't realized yet," or "Oh, maybe I thought so," and then they will change their character. You can write them out of the story, or something will happen to that character, like they'll, a near-death experience, and then they'll be a whole new person kind of thing. There's a lot of different ways to approach it, but I feel a lot of it comes down to the player rather than their character, because there's a reason that player is playing that character. And if the group is all mature, respecting of each other people, you can have a conversation and the other person should respect it, and you can change whatever's not quite fitting right so that everybody's happy. But then you have the cases where sometimes it's just the player isn't fitting into the group. It's not their play style. It's not, they had different expectations for what the group was going to be. A lot of it just comes down to sitting down with them and talking about it, which it can be very difficult to do, especially if you don't know the person particularly well. If it's a one-shot, just suffer through it. unless they're causing mega issues, just suffer through it, and then don't have them in your next one-shot or campaign.
Right. Now, Lawful Pessimist here was saying the worst thing a player can say to me is, I'm just playing my character. And I think that is the standard defense you get when this happens. You talk to the player, and he's like, well, I'm just playing my character. That's what he would do. And so when you're confronted with that as your defense, you have to explain to them, like, I get you're playing your character, but that's a character. Can we talk about your character a little bit? Like,
yes.
So you're playing your character that you made.
I have heard that before, and I'm not going to name any names, but there was a person who I'd played in a couple of campaigns with. I DM'd them in a couple of campaigns, and they had a couple of characters who kept doing the same things. And I'm like, it's not just your character, because you keep making this character. At this point, it's you. But I've also had other people just make it, well, it's just what my character do. Your character, this applies to everyone. This applies to myself. When you're in a situation and you're really into character, and you're like, this is what my character would do. Your character, just like you, have options in life. You're put into a scenario. Your brain doesn't immediately go, this is the only thing I would do in this scenario and could never be talked out of and would never ever. There's always something else or some other option available to you. It may not be your first choice, but your character is not a lone wolf in this campaign. They are playing with a group of people, an adventuring party. So if this option that this is the first thing I would do, this is definitely what my character wants to do, this is number one on this ranking of like 3 different things I could do, this is number one thing, but I know that it would make other players unhappy, or I suspect it would make, you go to option number 2, which you might not be as incredibly happy with, but the fact that everyone else is happier should be enough to elevate it up to be like, yeah, that's fine.
Right.
Because there's so many different ways the story is not set in stone. Just like your character is not set in stone. Your character, if a character goes through an entire like arcs of campaign and doesn't change, that's also an issue with your character. People change and react to things in their environment, people, friendships, and relationships that happen. Right. So saying it's what my character would do is always a thing for me to go, well, what else would your character do in that situation? Because if you're in that situation, gosh, there's 6 different things I could think of that I would do in this scenario. What are the 6 different things that your character would think of to do in this scenario? And if they only have a one-track brain, you should probably be playing somebody else. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, it really comes back down to like what everybody's saying in the chat here too, and what you've been saying is that it's realizing as a player that you are part of a cooperative game.
Yeah.
It's a shared experience. It's for the group's fun. And if you have a character who doesn't fit with a party, you wouldn't be with a party. And the other players are going to bend over backwards to try to accommodate you. Don't abuse that. Like if your character is a squeaky wheel that's constantly, running off, doing something, or like betraying the party and stuff, realize at a certain point, your character's got to go.
Yeah.
That's not fun for anybody.
Jeff, are you talking about my pirate?
Or I don't
usually
know.
that guy a little bit, but like one of the things I was gonna say is like you're right though, it's the character arc. Like I think it's one thing if a character when the other characters first meet him come off that way a little.
Yeah.
But when you have good background reasons, and you are gonna say, well, I'm playing my character, but the thing is you have it in mind that over time people are gonna learn more about you, that you're gonna develop these relationships, that these things are gonna happen. And that's kind of one of the things we've kind of talked about a bit with our game is that my guy is that guy. He is kind of he's the asshole pirate.
Yeah, I'm playing that guy currently in Monday Night's campaign.
Yeah.
He's a giant asshole.
Right.
But this is his first time in a group. He's not just huddled away in his basement and is, up in the country at his wine estate. He's in town. He's trying to fix stuff. So he has a goal of trying to get his wealth back and all this stuff. Power, money, blah, ha, ha, nobility. But he realizes he can't achieve that by himself. And so that's why he's in this group setting and scenario. So that, over time, we're only like episode 10. So that's going to change how he interacts with other NPCs or people and stuff over time, because people aren't static.
Right.
People do tend to fall for the same certain things, but they will grow and change.
Right. And I think as a DM, it's important if you have a character like that that you help give those characters the opportunity to show that they can do these things as well, that you're not leaving them in a spot that they can't grow or mature, because then the other players can become a little resentful without realizing like there is an arc that's there if he gets a chance to tell a little of it. So you give them those opportunities and they react. You let the other players know like, hey, I know this guy's an a-hole, but don't worry, it's going somewhere. Like, you gotta tell them what's going on.
There's something going on here.
It'll come around eventually. You'll get to it. Like, everybody has to always be a little patient. If you're dealing with people who are all your friends, you know each other well, you know what's going to come. You already know what kind of players everyone else is. But if you're just at a random table, you're not really sure where people are at.
Yeah, well, that's why in one-shots I try not to kind of play those kinds of people, because it can come off as very rude and stuff. But if it's a new campaign with people I've never played with before, which happens a lot, especially online, it's really good to have a session 0. Or even just like an hour hand to talk before the game. Like, hey, this is kind of what I'm thinking about playing. Everybody cool with that? I kind of see it going maybe here. And if there's somebody who's just like, I don't really like the sound of that, you go, okay, well, let's just change it a little bit. Make everybody happy. It's not that hard. This is not your only quest in Destiny in life. Your character can change slightly to accommodate fun for everyone. Because if people aren't having fun, you're not going to have as much fun.
Right.
There's a question in the chat I want to get to here, but I didn't want to squeak in one sentence. I've been trying to squeak in for a few. It's okay.
You're okay, Lenny.
Lively conversation. You're the guest.
We told you you're the guest. You talk all you want.
But basically what I was going to say is that like a rude character is awesome if the party is having fun with them, like players, not the characters necessarily. Right. If the players are enjoying the friction that's there, because it can add a lot of spice and it can be fun. Right. But if it's not,
Yeah, it's one of the things I do try to do with like my pirate is I try to make sure that when he does interact, that like there's times where he'll do things that are rather humorous. Like the time when he was dead on the ground and the paladin comes over and heals him, and he wakes up and the first thing he does is he looks at Kodo, this dragonborn. He's like, "Don't think this entitles you to a cut of the loot," and he just takes off back to the battle. Like he's an asshole, but he's kind of
these are assholes.
So but those are things you do have to keep in mind if you're going to try to play one of these characters. And if you're DMing it, like I said, I think it's very important to make sure you give them those opportunities. Now in the chat, Jeff, what do we got going on here in this chat? Boy,
well, we've got a lot of conversation tonight, which is fantastic. Yeah. Thanks for chatting. What caught my eye, though, is there was a question about PvP at the table and whether it should be allowed. Now, we've touched on this a lot in previous episodes. Yeah.
This is specific with a rude character, so let's talk a little bit about how you handle that, because players will handle it if the DM doesn't.
Boy, howdy.
Yes, they
will. Sometimes things get out of hand.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I've been the DM. I was like, it's my first time DMing. I don't know what to do.
Hey, guys, quit killing each other, please. I want to run my story. So, yeah, I mean, if you do have this rude character, I would say, as everything, it comes down to having the conversation out of character. What are the expectations around the table? Are the players comfortable with the idea of going toe to toe with each other, of playing to that edge? Like, where is that edge? And if everyone at the table is agreeing and they're enjoying it, having a good time, I say DM stays out of it. Just let it go, unless it completely derails their fun.
If everyone's kind of having fun with it, like, because it is an in character. If it's an only in character thing, sure, no problem. Let it happen. If you can tell that your players are legitimately getting pissed off at the way this conversation or something is going, I'll enter it in a different direction, and then we'll talk about it after the game.
Yes, definitely talk about it after the game.
Because if you don't talk about it, it's going to fester.
Yeah, there's a tendency, I think, for a lot of people, myself included when I was younger, of like, you get that tense, awkward, emotional situation happening in a session, and you go, ooh, let's not do that. And you derail it, and then you don't have that conversation, and it doesn't get resolved. Festers, like you were saying, it stays awkward, and being afraid to step in the way of something and actually address it is how you get a lot more of it.
And that's kind of part of that character bleed, is when your character's getting really upset and you're getting actually genuinely upset, not just in character, but you yourself are getting upset. That's something that has got to be talked out. Or, when your players, you can tell that they're actually getting legitimately upset. You're like, all right, we're gonna turn off from this from now, because we only have so many hours to play this game or whatever, because we all have busy lives. But after the game, we'll sit down and talk about it. So typically I like to kind of just derail that. Oh, look.
Yeah.
Beholder, whatever, something. NPC,
Surprise, guys.
friendly NPC everybody likes. Walk in. You you can typically derail off of that, but then make sure it's handled and resolved after the
Right.
game.
Mhm.
That was
usually
always
something that can be talked out.
that was always the hardest thing about LARP.
Oh my
Like,
god.
I know you kind of say you haven't LARPed yet, but we were in a
Mhm.
50-player LARP with like 5 STs.
Plus
And
international
me and Jeff
games
were-
associated with it. So,
there were chapters of this game all across the country, and players could come in on any given Friday from who knows where, and like it was always just so tough because so much of that game is PvP oriented that it was really hard
Mhm.
with that many players to really manage how things were handled out of character afterwards. Like,
Well, and the biggest issue was that the only interaction these players had with one another was in character.
Oh, yeah.
So the only
Yeah.
personality they know is that guy's a fucking dick. I'm gonna kill his ass.
Yep.
And then you go to Denny's afterwards. You're like, fuck, that guy, I'm not sitting next to him.
Yep.
Mhm.
And nobody crosses the line. It's just like you go back in the game and you hate each other.
There are still people there who only know me by my character name. I can
Yep.
promise you it's still true.
So yeah, that's a classic example of how things are screwed up. Currently driven a link. Oh, okay. Well, that's funny because Lancaster's one of the characters we were going to talk about, but
Oh, the name shout out there even.
yeah, we'll leave that one out. But yeah, so I mean, it's real challenging because you have to have that conversation. In LARP, it was really hard to make that happen. Because like I said,
Mhm.
it was so clicky to begin with, just because of the numbers and because the game and
And especially if you don't know the
think
people,
2%
it's always awkward kind of walking up to somebody like, hey, we need to have a conversation. I need to talk about feelings and stuff. And like, but once you just sit down and just do it, that's part of it. I'm like, just be an adult. Just talk about it. Because once you get it out, you'll be fine. But it's getting to there. That can be very difficult to be like, hey, let's talk about this. Let's talk about how we felt about that thing that happened tonight.
it was real challenging too because people a lot of times are traveling.
Mhm.
They
So
weren't
they would come
even
in.
even our players.
Ooh,
You'd
yeah.
have people drive in from
Yeah.
like 2+ hours away. They're leaving that night. So like, hey, let's sit and talk. They're like, nope. They're just gone.
But those are large org based LARP problems that you don't see at a table. Like, so, but if you are going to get into these other kinds of systems and other kinds of games or styles of games, like, or if you get into larger groups, like it can be, you will see more of it. I think the larger your group gets, like it's more likely to happen. So,
Yeah, I think one of the other things they were talking about in the chat, it may be unique to us. A lot of us in our chat happen to also be content creators on Twitch or YouTube. And I think the act of being a entertainer, in a sense, I mean, I guess that's what we are, right? Hopefully, but with the added pressure of performing kind of either creates these circumstances where PvP may happen when it shouldn't, or you have to be cognizant of the fact that while the players may be okay with characters getting murdered off, the fan base may not be. So like there's a weird dynamic that's not normally present in a tabletop game that I know as a player, I'm already kind of interacting with that a little bit and being like, oh, this is different. This is definitely a strange flavor of gaming that I'm not accustomed to yet. I don't know. Have you noticed that for your own stuff?
So I've noticed it on other people's stuff. Everything on my channel that I run, or someone from my home group will run, it's literally the exact same as it would have been before we started streaming it 3 years ago. We changed nothing. I started streaming it without a webcam or anything. We just had all of our voices on Skype and a crappy little Roll20 window on a really poorly made overlay. And then we got cameras, and then just slowly we started upgrading, but nothing about how we played the game changed. Because a lot of it, I feel like a lot of Twitch stuff comes down to chemistry. And if your group is good chemistry and you're all having fun, everyone watching is going to be having fun.
Yep,
So-
exactly.
Yeah, that's for real.
I don't change anything about it, but I've seen it on other channels. Even when I'm playing on other channels, I'm like, I'm just going to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
That's my goal here. I'm here to play this game and have fun. So I never worry about what is the audience going to think of this? Or I'm like, whatever. I'm having fun. This
like
is my game that I'm playing here.
Yeah. I like to think that's how I'm doing it, but I've caught myself a couple times being like, what? Oh no, wait. I should change the pacing on this a little bit, or or whatever. There's like an awareness of the clock, I think, is what it is.
There is more of an awareness of the clock, which thankfully has stopped me in like a couple of groups that I've played in from going from like 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. So there's that, because you don't want to have you don't want that running because you start to get like this.
That's exactly what we do, though. It's exactly what we do because we don't play as often. We only play about every 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks sometimes in our game. So we do like 10 p.m. to like 4 in the morning sometimes. Yep. So it can get pretty brutal. Yeah,
but we were doing that like once a week or like 3 times a week. So it was a bit much. So keeping an eye on the clock though does kind of help with pacing in general, because if you have good pacing and you'd be like, all right, I have a 2-hour time slot to do this. You go to a convention, you run a game, everyone's going to have fun with that game because you know how to kind of do pacing based on how your players are reacting to things. So if anything, it's just helped me become a better DM because of that consciousness of the clock. But not like, oh no, we got to wrap up. I'm like, oh, I'm fine going a few minutes over most things. I'm like, we're having fun. This is great. But I'm not going to go hours over because it also leaves people wanting more. Your players will be like, oh man, that was so good. I can't wait for next week. They'll bring that hype and enthusiasm rather than be like, oh man, we played for like 8 hours last night. I'm exhausted.
It's finding
we don't do that again next week.
Sweet spot.
It's finding that good cliffhanger to leave on. And sometimes as a DM, it's hard to get that put in there at the right time.
Even if you don't have a cliffhanger, as long as you just end in a decent note, or like last week I ended, we were playing through A Touch of Death and Raven left. They were fighting Octoput, and it was not going well for them. I think 2 party members are like 3 HP. One has a max of 11 right now because they got hit by not Touch of Death, Harm. And then, some Mummy Curse and like Mummy Rot. And so they were all like, they got their ass whooped last week. And so
that's all it takes.
they started fleeing, and I was like, all right, y'all get out of the temple. And that's where we stop for tonight. So we're going to come back in tomorrow night with them being like,
so good.
Y'all just exited the temple. And they're going to be like, so you don't always need that cliffhanger. Sometimes you just need a little bit of relief, or like, oh man, we got out, or just don't know what's going to happen next. But dang, that was a lot that happened this episode. So it's interesting streaming, but I feel like I don't pay much attention. Sometimes the people watching give out good suggestions. I'm like, that's a good name for this inn. Yes, this is the inn name, but it doesn't really go any further than that for me. I don't alter my RP or any way I would handle any ruling decisions based on chat, because I care more about my group having fun than
I think that's what you have to do, yeah.
And if there's 1 or 2 viewers that aren't enjoying it, they'll go find a channel they do enjoy. There's so many different games out there. Like, there's so much out there.
And the people who are having fun watching it are probably having fun because the group's having fun. So, kind of
I think you could definitely tell.
Pace.
And I think I am blown away by how much chat we're getting tonight.
My friends, I've made some friends over on a stream. I don't want to step on Lindy's not here tonight, but they've come over from the Grouch Couch, and they do a stream on Sundays where they drink lots of wine while they play D&D and get rather inebriated, and they have a hell of a good time. They've all come over here tonight because I invited them, so they've shown up. I do want to thank all my couch friends there that I've made over the last couple weeks. So they're there. And thanks for representing and coming out today.
Yeah, much appreciated. So, man, we are all over the place.
We are a little bit, but
I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I am super interested in content creation because that's been our hobby recently. Yep. And I know a lot of you guys are too, but that's maybe not what the audience is here to listen to. I don't know. I imagine non-content creators don't want to hear about how the sausage is made. But, like on that topic of, the root characters still, one of the things we talked about before was about how as a DM do you interact NPC wise. Like a lot of times it could just be, the character has a low charisma, so they get some like minuses to their interactions and whatnot. Some DMs may just ignore that player. Some players may just decide not to have that character talk. How
there's a question in chat you probably ought to address real quick, Jeff. He says, what do you mean by content creator? All DMs create content. Do you want to specify a bit on that just before you get any further into the weeds here?
Yeah. I think somebody's going to, take me to the weeds and hack me up for this one. So content creator, what I'm defining it as is somebody who makes material for YouTube or Twitch or some other service, like a show for people to consume. So not necessarily what a DM does every, game session where they put a lot of work into it, writing
doing
content.
that already. It's just the additional.
Right.
Yeah.
Because there is various ways you can define that. There are some Discords I'm on for tabletop RPGs where content creator refers to people who are creating content for others to use. As opposed to using themselves. Like they're writing modules for DM's Guild. They're writing rule sets that you can adapt for your game. We have a guy who's going to come on in a couple weeks, that kid Boomer, who's a content creator in those regards. He creates content for people to use versus you being a entertainer on Twitch as that kind of content creator. So go ahead, Jeff, and continue on now. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew what we were referring to.
So many definitions because I do all the graphic design and music selection stuff, so I do a lot. So
yeah, so just before I didn't hate to interrupt your flow, but I did feel like we needed to specify that.
Well, I've completely lost my train of thought, so that's perfect.
I'm sorry,
It's all good. There's a lot of ways to create content, and I love all the different examples we're seeing out here. Like that's been one of the coolest things about doing this is that we've kind of created a network now, interacting with people, like yourself, Lindy, and all the people in our chat now, and the people on our Discord. There's a lot of people being extremely creative in different ways than what we normally would do. And I don't know, to me, it feels like we're getting a lot more out of gaming as a result of interaction with other gaming groups.
Yeah.
It's so...
Everyone has something different to bring to the table. But I remember your train of thought. You were talking about NPC interaction with rude.
Yes. Thank you. Somebody pays attention to me. It wasn't me. So the question is, I guess, when you're talking about how NPCs interact, I guess if you're at a game where you deal with social roles a lot, which we tend not to, then it's kind of mechanically built into the cake, right? So you got an 8 charisma, so you're kind of a putz, and you got a -1, right? But what does a -1 really translate to in terms of in-game interaction? How angry should you get as an NPC towards that player?
So I feel like that depends on whatever your play style is in your campaign. I'm a very improv heavy DM who runs more RP heavy campaigns. It doesn't really matter the system. So when I have an NPC who's just being rude, or a PC who's being rude to an NPC, that NPC, I have a very simple way of making my NPCs. I give them here's your name, here's their personality. No, it doesn't be super in depth, just a basic something about them, like a quirk. Could just be something they like, and then a motive. They're trying to sell goods to the PCs, hey, I'm a salesman, buy my stuff. Or if they're just a street urchin who's don't kill me, I just want to survive. You look really scary. So they'll have those 3 things: personality, quirk, and then motive. So how that person, that PC acts and interacts with the NPC, I already know how they're going to respond because they have a base motive. And because it's just so simple, those 3 basic things, I can make PCs on the fly. I'm okay, this flower vendor, and she's going to be a bit snobby, and her motive is to, get with the guy who owns the butcher shop across the street. Done. Her name's Charlotte. And so I already know how they're going to, if they talk to Charlotte, how she's going to react to whatever they say, because bam, instant NPC, 3 basic simple steps. And if they if it's going just really poorly for them, I might be all right, give me a persuasion or a deception check. And depending on how good their stats are, they might be able to wheedle their way out of that conversation, or that NPC is just going to be I'm going to call the city guard on you. You just nat one this, or you have a negative. Because there's always a chance they can pull themselves out, but it'll depend on their role. But it has to get to that point first. Typically, I know how they're going to react based on the conversation that's going on before I even make them use stats and that kind of thing.
Now, what about a lot of DMs or storytellers will take their game and they'll say, this NPC is here to deliver a plot point. The players need some piece of information to get the plot going. I think a lot of DMs make the mistake of giving away for that to fail. If you want your breadcrumb out there, you have to put the freaking breadcrumb out there. And I think a lot of times a root player will screw this up.
And more often than not, that's a rule. Don't let any rolls happen. Don't let any rolls happen for that. But also, your breadcrumb does not have to be with that one particular NPC. That breadcrumb can be put in anybody's bread basket in town. It doesn't have to be
Charlotte, the florist, who's trying to get with the butcher across the street to give you that breadcrumb. It could be the butcher. They really piss off Charlotte and whatever. They go to the butcher shop to buy some dinner or whatever. He might offhandedly mention something or be able to get it out of him or whatever. Or they see, oh no, a piece of paper on the ground if they've really just pissed everyone off in town. Or some runes, and then someone makes, figures out, oh wait, I remember something about this. Or there are so many ways to bring in clues, whether it be a paragraph, a word, a phrase. It does not have to be this one. Oh no, they killed my NPC who was supposed to do that. Doesn't matter. There is a whole world out there full of other people who could plausibly know this piece of information.
And I think that's a fantastic piece of advice for people using modules. If you pick up Curse of Strahd, and it's like, here's NPC X who's supposed to deliver the breadcrumb. And I think DMs, when they're playing in those modules, are like, they're not talking to NPC X. They want to go over into the bread shop. And and so I think people like really struggle to figure out how to reroute those, because those things seem like they're supposed to be on rails, and so I think that's a really great piece of advice for people that are doing module work.
I learned that the hard way, because my group is so spontaneous and just crazy and random. They'll be like, we didn't have a good first impression with this person, we're never talking to them again. I'm like, okay, well, that's great. So I was like, all right, well, why can't this NPC know it? And so, because Curse of Strahd was my first module that I ran, they went all over the place, and they went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So they eventually got everything done, but it was a lot of different NPCs giving the information to certain PCs than the module had suggested. Sometimes it'd go off without a hitch, and you'd be like, that was great, that was so easy. But sometimes you got to just be like, this is the information. When I see a spot that they're talking to an NPC that could give them this information, they're going to get it then.
Wow, I just got the warning about our timing here. How in the world did we already get to an hour 45? This feels like we just got started.
I was actually just looking at it myself. Now, you are Eastern time zone, so you are an hour ahead of us. Are you doing all right, Lindy?
I normally don't
you're doing fine, so I was
I'm a night owl. Is it 2 or 3 a.m. yet? No, I'm fine.
I'm having a good time. I'm good to go.
Yeah, I'm good to go. We'll just keep rolling on.
If the audience is still sticking with us, we're doing something right.
Yeah, we didn't exactly. We've kind of moved already into like almost topic 3 territory at this point.
Don't worry, we'll have like 5 more tonight.
Yeah, we'll go through a couple more. But I guess at this point we can take a few questions from our live chat. Do we have any questions from the live chat? Yeah, it's only 9:45 for those guys. They're out on the West Coast. They're
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting conversation here about structure, essentially, of the gaming. And I think for modules and more kind of, I don't know how to define it, I guess, plot-centric games, which sounds silly when you say it out loud. But when you have something that's like that hard on, like, these are the steps you have to get to go through the story, I think you're much more prone to having problems with the missing breadcrumb. But even then, there's easily a way to get around
There's so many ways. I actually prefer modules over than just a sandbox world because I am so improv heavy. It's kind of nice to be like, here's an overarching thing that's kind of going on that you somewhat, as long as you guide them in that general direction, they'll be fine. Because if not, I'd just be like, man, here's a world. Where do you want to do? Where do you want to go? Because I have nothing prepared, but I'll react to something if you react. So having that kind of base is nice for me. So
it's interesting that you say the module is more improv heavy, because for us, everything we do is always homebrew. And in homebrew, I feel like I have nothing to worry about. Like, the sandbox only has limits where I put them. And if I haven't developed a certain section of the world and you decide to go over there, I just develop it. If there's an NPC that I don't like that I made, I just drop it. I get a new NPC. Whereas at the module, I feel like I'm stuck to the story.
Nah, you can do that exact same thing, but you have slight names, places, and an overarching general plot that can shift and change. Like, and Beyond the Mountains of Madness, they're in Antarctica. They're doing all this stuff. They're doing sciencing stuff. Now, was a Nazi apocalypse with laser shoggoths originally part of the module? No, but it went there. But I have that base in Antarctica. You have till the end of the summer. Get back to New York. Some of these things are probably going to happen. These breadcrumbs can be delivered by anyone. So it's nice to kind of have that. I'm very improv heavy.
Yeah, and I was going to say, that's really the key. Like, Jeff and you have very high levels of improv skill. I think that when the people who struggle are people maybe who aren't as good as
with the improv.
as they like to call the pantsing improv DMing part of it.
Yeah, I used to like prep so much.
I used to.
I actually started to prep my improv when I was first beginning to DM because I knew with my home group, I love you guys so much. You guys taught me how to handle anything, literally anything. Because they'd be like, "Man, I'm gonna seduce this hag," and I'd be like, "You're gonna what?" And so I grew to kind of expect that to a certain extent. And so I'd be like, all right, if they try to seduce this NPC, this. So I just start writing in my improv. And then it got to the point where I was like, I don't need to write this down.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of stopped because I was like, this is way too much work. Why am I putting this much work into it? They're having just as much fun with a couple things I've panic thrown in. Then when I have the specific huge, because I was having to write in full list of contingencies on all this stuff. So I've become improv heavy. I used to prep every single little thing, but now I kind of like having a module to fall back on. Makes it nice and lazy. If I have an open world, yes, there's the vast wide world of I don't have anything prepped. I might be here's a capital, and there's a plague. I don't know. You figure it out. And so my players don't have typically as much fun when it's that open because I like. They have more fun when they have a general direction, when there are breadcrumbs to throw in. But I don't have a huge overarching thing. It's nice to have someone else make that for me, and I can just get kind of halfway maybe there somehow, and we'll have fun along the way, and that's what matters.
Yeah, I'm going to get to Lawful Pessimist's question here in just a second. But I've definitely found, to follow up on what you've been saying, that for me, when I was younger, I definitely was more of the scripter. I wanted to write out my story. I started from... And in the ancient world, the gods became this and did this. And then it came all the way down the kingdoms and all the people involved. And it had all these story elements. And I knew what the end was going to be. And then I realized the game wasn't as fun for players when I did it that way. And I didn't have as much fun telling that story because I'd already had the fun, But then when I came into game unprepared, so to speak, with just kind of crib notes, oh, here's some names, here's some general ideas of themes and stuff I wanted to get to. Here's some places that I hope will involve, something. Those were my best games because I was flying by the seat of my pants, coming up with creative ideas. I'd write them down, I'd flesh them out later. And for me, that's when I was having the most fun. My players seemed to have more energy when we were doing that. And when people talked to me about game moments that they enjoyed, they were always the ones I didn't plan. So I just take the hint, I guess, You suck at writing, Jeff.
I had one of those sessions on Sunday in my live game. I run a live game at my local game shop with players who I don't know. I just met them 4 game sessions ago. We play every other Sunday on my Sundays off from work. And so I go in and they had just had a very large confrontation in the slum area. And so this game, I was I'm not really prepping where this is going to go other than they're starting in this little holding cell, getting interrogated by this gnome investigator. And after that, I don't know where this is going to go. So, and it was a 3-hour session and it was great. They brought a brand new player with a brand new character to the table. They didn't tell me about ahead of time. Show up, second game in a row.
At least they had a character.
Yeah, they had it all ready to go. They just didn't tell me there was going to be another one. So,
it means they're doing something right, though. If you get new players.
Yeah, I told them. I did tell them the other day. I was okay, guys, 7 players is enough. We're capping it here. That's where I'm drawing the line. So, but it was great. He was a great addition to the party, as was the previous players. I didn't have a problem, but it was that was immediately when I realized I'm glad I didn't prep anything. Because I've got an extra player now, even so. Those things happen, but it was such a really cool game session for them to sit down and digest everything that had just happened as well. Because I wasn't trying to push them into scenes or try to drag them in a direction. They sit there, they figured all that out on their own, and so and I think those are things you can do with improv that you can't do with a railroad. So
yeah. Before it completely gets lost to the shuffle chat here, Lawful Pessimist had a question earlier, the question was pretty good, and it was actually something we kind of talked about last week.
It was actually a topic from last week's Wisdom Check. So if you go onto YouTube or into our videos, you can find last week's Wisdom Check where we had J Brews with us, and we did talk about that very topic. But we'll give Lindy a chance to weigh in.
Yeah, so the question was, how do you deal with challenging or triggering encounters, particularly when they are initiated by 1 or 2 players? And so I take from your question what you're talking about is emotionally I don't like to use the word triggering because it's kind of got a connotation these days, but literally what it is it elicits some kind of personal response that maybe somebody isn't prepared to feel in a game situation. So yeah, we talked a lot about this last week. In particular, I talked a little bit about writing a game where I accidentally wrote personal things into a story and didn't realize it until I was running the game. I went, oh, I should not run this. And I know there's a lot of times, especially when you're gaming with people that you don't really know, that you may have themes or concepts in your game. Vampires are notorious for this, as its themes are kind of a little, run the gamut of dangerous topics, and they can create some uncomfortable scenarios for people. So have you ever run into that? Do you have anything that...
To a certain extent, it's not as much of an issue with my home group because we pretty much know each other's all right, But with new groups especially, Kiana S on Twitter, she's made safety rules for tabletop things, which are really, really helpful for those kinds of scenarios, especially with people you don't know. You can just be like, hey, not cool with this, just, card up, and they can be like, all right, and you can just shift away from that. But if people are okay with it being very emotional and challenging, or players jumped into this, you can see, but they're not negatively okay with it, as long as they're not negatively not okay, as long as they're cool. But I guess I'm crying, but I'm fine. Just talk about it afterwards. That's aftercare prep is important.
Right.
Being like, hey, yes, that was really emotional. I was feeling this. Just talk about it. As long as everyone's okay at the moment. If they're not okay in the moment, okay, we're gonna stop here. We're gonna rewind if necessary, but usually you can just redirect or something.
Yeah. I mean, everyone uses game for something different. Some people use it to explore their problems so they can tackle their problems head on. Other people use escapism to get away from it. And if you're dealing with someone who's escaping, you don't want to drag them back into that.
No.
So you have to know your players a little, their motivations for gaming.
And if you don't really know them, it's good to kind of ask beforehand, hey, just message me privately. I'm the DM. If you have anything issues you don't want brought up, I'll make sure it doesn't come up in the game. Kind of something like that.
It's a challenging one because people aren't naturally inclined to just bring up their trauma, right? So and there was a statement in the chat there, sensitive topics. If you can't stand the heat, stay out of the kitchen. Well, yeah, but if you don't know the kitchen's hot, and you walk in the room and you suddenly are surprised by it, that could be a big problem.
Now, I think there are certain game systems, and we talked about this last week, that maybe lend more to those situations coming up, and players just need to. If you're going to get into a game system you haven't played before and you're playing with people you don't know or a DM you don't know, research the system a little bit before you sign up. If you don't know what Vampire the Masquerade is, for the love of God, read the book first, because you may find yourself in situations you will not enjoy in that game if you have certain things in your life that will resemble being dominated or things of that nature. You're not going to necessarily enjoy all the aspects of that game.
And if you're not cool with going insane or physical gore and body horror, don't play Call of Cthulhu.
Exactly. Yeah, don't play Cthulhu
or
if you don't like it.
Find a group of people you know and are comfortable with to talk about it beforehand, to make a more investigative Call of Cthulhu game, or maybe it's just a cult and not an eldritch horror. But there is a amount of research that you should put into a new game or system. But if it's, hey, we're going to play D&D, and then gang rape comes up, where did that come out of? That can, some things do just come up, and you're like, well, that's out of left field.
That was literally a tweet that was put out last week. I don't know if you saw it.
I did.
I did a tweet that was put out, and I was like, you have got to be kidding. Someone thought that was a good idea.
And that setting was very specific as well, because it was a convention. There are children at a convention. You don't put, even if it's a horror game, you don't put that content in a convention setting with people you do not know, in public with people around
that's
you.
Even worse than I imagined when I first read that story. So.
Yeah, because even if it's it's horror. If you can't stand horror, yes, it's horror. It can be an issue, but it shouldn't be any issue at a public convention with people under the age of 13.
No. That's a big no.
Yeah, that's just common sense.
Yeah, you would think so.
You can do that, sure. If you're thrown off by it, someone's, you're invited over to someone's house and they play, and you just don't go back, or just talk about it.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't even be an issue at a gaming convention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is an interesting topic because,
as a younger player or younger DM, I guess I should say, I screwed up in one scene in particular I can think of where, it was a Sabat situation. They had captured somebody and they were despicable, horrible people, doing violent Saw-like things. And I took it too far. And the two people in the room didn't give any indication that they were having problems, but I found out later that it was a huge trigger for them. There was a huge issue afterwards.
Well, and that's why it's good to kind of be like, even if you are, that's why the safety system rules that Kiana made are nice, because you don't have to be verbal, because sometimes it can be difficult.
Extremely.
To be verbal and like, hey, speak up. Hey, I'm kind of uncomfortable with this. Just being kind of like, hey, like low key, even just a text message. So you don't want it to come up in front of the whole group, just a little something.
Well, and what the safety rules did that's really good is it almost put like in the way that people who do like domination type stuff, like they have like safety words to let you know you've gone too far. Like they coded them in a way that you can just say a phrase, and that is people, if they all get on the page with this, it lets them know that you've crossed the line. Yeah, you're getting too close, and to give them time. That's a system
that's literally a place for other role-playing occasions. Why not tabletop RPGs?
Right, exactly. They use it in so many other situations out there. Like, why not apply it to this? And so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think another thing that would be interesting is, should games maybe have kind of like a rating system like video games do, like E for everyone, M for mature, but even in that system, you can still go too far. So it's like, I'd hate to just blindly
it's
be
more
like,
about
this one's rated R.
The story than the system and the settings. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are certain topics, like the chat's kind of going a little back and forth here on this topic. I think there are certain topics, like blood and gore that just make somebody uncomfortable. Okay, like I used to work in a cadaver lab, so I'm a little tough into that. I mean, Dustin's had some.
I work in emergency room.
In that, so like blood and guts, not a thing that really bothers either of us. That doesn't seem to be on the same level as, say, somebody who had like a loved one who was murdered or something, and then a scene comes up that seems like that scene.
Yeah,
like there's no way that DM could know that was happening.
Yeah, because someone could be fine watching all the 6 Saw movies. I don't even remember. Like they can watch Saw movies all day. Yeah, but then if like a very specific instance of a scenario of like, someone drowning, like especially like a child or something drowning, and they knew someone or growing up, and you never know. It's like, it's always like hidden little things. So it's good to kind of just be like, hey.
And I think what we need to, to help understand maybe for so the people on trying to figure this out is like, it's not up to the DM to know ahead of time not to run that. It's to be able to read the table, what's going on with your player, recognize that something isn't right, and then just kind of gently redirect in a different way.
It doesn't have to be a huge
It doesn't have to be a huge thing. Yeah, you gently recourse the river to another place, and then revisit later what happened there with the player after the fact, so that if you play with that player again, you know what you're dealing with.
Exactly. And speaking up's a big part of it, or having a moment before the game to talk with everybody one-on-one and be like, hey, is there anything, anything? And then, boop. And even if it doesn't come to mind immediately, it could pop up later. You can be like, oh, that's why, again, just kind of speaking up.
Yeah, and it's a challenge in some groups. Oh, yeah, another follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Nuggetsaurus. Another one of Lindy's players. I recognize that.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and it's interesting because, in a circumstance where there's a group of people and the majority of people are just happy with the scene, they're going along with it, they're having a good time. The person who's having an issue with the scene has a lot of social pressure not to speak. And so it's not as simple as just saying, stand up, stop the game, put the brakes on for everyone else's enjoyment, say my spiel, have the DM have to react to me. And sometimes people don't want to share their experience.
Yeah.
Why should I have to explain to you that this upset me? I don't want to out myself.
That's one of the beautiful things about today's technology is you could just message the DM, like text message or slide a piece of paper, just something real subtle. It doesn't have to be in front of the whole group or the world for everyone to see. It could just be like, hey, I'm really uncomfortable with this. Can we change topic, or can we just avoid this?
Right. And I think most DMs or whatnot can, unless they're like hardcore railroad storyline and they're like, I can't come up with something else, sorry. I think most people will make an adjustment. And I think, like we've been saying, it's a social contract thing around your table. Afterwards, have a conversation. You don't have to get into details or anything. Just figure out kind of where you're at in the situation. If there's anything you can smooth over, make sure your players know that you're listening to them, that you understand what they're going through on some level. I mean, you may not know the specific details, but if you can make that work, make it work. And if you can't, well, then you and that player or the player in the group need to figure out where they need to situate. If they need to separate to come up with a different game, whatever. Not every gaming group and a gaming experience is going to be for every person, but I think it's reasonable to make an effort to kind of help other people enjoy the game and to eliminate roadblocks that can prevent them from having fun.
Just being considerate of everybody. It's just basic common decency.
It shouldn't be a hard concept, but it seems to be.
It does. People get emotionally charged when things happen or come up, and so it can be an issue. But
yeah, and I think a lot of people when they write a story or a scene, like I'm thinking back on that scene I ran, I didn't realize I was crossing a line at the time, but as soon as I realized it, or I was told, I felt defensive, and that's not really my personality. But like in that moment, I was like, oh, I don't want to be accused of that. Like I didn't mean it that way. Like, oh, I thought we were just having fun. Now I'm responsible for hurting somebody. And I think for a lot of DMs and players this day and age that are seeing the scene, we kind of come into this and you go, ooh, why'd you call me out on that? That's not cool. Now I'm feeling awkward, And so there's like a weird dynamic there at play. See, I'm trying to keep up with chat while I'm talking.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. It's a good problem to have, right? When it's hard to keep up with your chat 'cause things are popping. So we do think, I think it was it was Lawful Pessimist who put up the question, I believe, correct?
Yeah, it was a good one.
Thank you, Lawful Pessimist, for the question. Again, we talked extensively on a lot of this last week on our episode with Jay Bruce, so you can find more commentary from me and Jeff on that episode, which you can find our stuff on YouTube now as well. So we're on YouTube and here at Twitch, so you get your pick of how you want to consume it later.
Awesome.
Not seeing anything else coming in from the chat, and we have hit our 2-hour mark. So
yeah, it's a long show. It's been a great show.
Time to. Yeah, it has been a great show. Thank you again for coming on, Lindy.
Thanks for having me.
Fantastic.
We'll have to have you back sometime.
Yeah. I think at this point, why don't we go ahead, Lindy, and start with you and tell all the good people out there where they can find you.
Sure. You can find me online on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, pretty much all the social media at Laugh Love Lindy, where I'm constantly playing tabletop RPGs because I'm an addict, and occasionally video games, but mostly tabletop RPGs. So
awesome.
Excellent. And you're not done there, right? They can find you on Encounter Roleplay.
Yeah, you can find me.
And with WebDM.
WebDM, Encounter Roleplay. So yeah, Mondays and Tuesdays on my channel. Tomorrow afternoon from 5 to 8 p.m. I will be running our second to last episode of Beyond the Mountains of Madness with a fantastic group of people. And then an hour after that, finishing off the last little bit of Touch of Death on Mists of Ravenloft. Then we're playing Cult Divinity Lost on Wednesday on Encounter Roleplay, Wednesday afternoon, 2 to 5. Normally we have May Black Roses Bloom on Tales from the Grim, but we are on a little 2-week break because people are getting married, people are going on vacation, people are having technical issues. So we're just going to come back in July and everything will be fine.
Adulting.
Thursday, WebDM. Friday, nothing this week. Saturday is going to be podcast recording, so you don't get to see that. And then Power Score RPG's channel for some fun D&D, where I get to play a necromancer who's really buff.
Now, somewhere in there, you're playing aliens. I saw it.
I do play aliens. I'm not playing aliens on Wednesday. We did just put up, I'm going to be putting up our episode of Aliens. We have a once a month aliens campaign on my channel that I'm going to be putting up our episode that we played a week before last onto YouTube, because I'm catching up on YouTube because I went to Origins.
And is that the new alien system that's out?
Not yet. We're currently using our Talsorian's fusion system, but then we heard Aliens was coming out, like official.
Yeah.
So like, yes, we can move to that now because we had a couple episodes.
A friend of the channel, Jowsum, he started running official the new Aliens on his channel the other day. Nice. And I got to watch some of that too. And then I saw yours and I was like, I can't tell if that's the same ship. I was like, is that the same ship? Or are they doing the same one?
It's not quite the same thing. No, we're doing our own thing. So whatever module comes out with it, we're just going to be using the mechanics. Ours is an Aliens, Blade Runner, Predator mashup world. So it's its own unique storyline.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's excellent. So it would be hard for you out there not to run into Lindy.
Yeah, she's literally on every game. So if you find a game, she's in it. I guarantee it. She's actually in our game. We just didn't know it this whole time. She's on the ship. She's one of those 41 halflings.
She's one of the 41 halflings that
Yes.
So, Dustin, you got any content you're putting out these days?
Oh, man, I got all kinds of content I'm putting out these days. If you want to see me play some MMOs, I'm currently not. You're out of luck. But I might be starting another one soon. My guild mates have made the move from ArcAge to Elder Scrolls Online for the Elsewhere expansion that just came out, and they're badgering me to start streaming that. So I may start being on there soon, streaming that on Plague State. You'll be able to find me there. You also find me most of the time here at TT2KB. I'm always in the Discord. Our Everstorm Discord is Bowerin. That's my character name on Everstorm, so that's the name I use there. You'll find me on August, I got to check my date again, August 7th. August 7th, I am running a one-shot on DadBod D&D, where I will be running a one-shot called The Escape from Cell Block 6. It's going to be a D&D 5e prison break. So all the spots, I believe, for that have already been filled. I'll have to check with Bob about that later, make sure. And, of course, you can find me, like I said, here at Plague State online on Twitch or here at TT2KB. Jeff, what do you do with your spare time when we're not talking game here?
Well, we are playing game together, and we mentioned this earlier. This Saturday at 10 p.m., we'll be doing the Everstorm game, which our wonderful DM Levi runs. So we'll be live streaming that for you. And in my personal time, I play a lot of video games, and I do some videos. So if you want to check out any of my Let's Play series, usually on absurdly hard difficulties of games, currently I'm playing some Primal Fear Arc with some YouTubers. So if you know Voxesto or the Apex Way or No Play Jack, those guys, we're all on the server together, and I'm making videos for it. It's good times. You'll find me at Rain Survives, just like my chat name over here. And there's 100 plus videos on there for you to watch. So if you enjoy something, you'll enjoy a lot of content there. And I want to say thank you all. If you find me this weekend, I'll be Skeezer, the little weird gnome wizard guy. And that's the name I go by in Discord in our channel. And otherwise, looking forward to seeing you guys. And next Monday, we'll be on again with another guest.
And because, yes, I was going to get to that in a second. But I believe for Everstorm this week, we may have something special in the works. So you'll definitely want to tune in to see it. It's going to be awesome. I got a little preview. It's going to be hella cool. Our tech guy here running the show tonight, Clint, he's been working very hard. You don't want to miss it. I'm not spoiling it. I won't do it, Clint. You don't have to cut me off here. I'm not telling anyone what it is, but it's awesome, and you're going to want to see it. So make sure you tune in for Everstorm 10 p.m. this Saturday. Next week, here on the Wisdom Check, Monday night, 10 p.m., we have DM Bob from DadBod D&D, where we are going to talk a little bit about creating fun one-shot games, how to build them versus longer campaigns, obviously. We're going to talk a little bit about his Dragon Heist game that he has running over there, the podcast, the things that they do there, and it'll be a good time. So tune back in here, guys, next week for more fun tabletop RPG talk.